All right, strap in, because today we're taking a deep dive into a novel that's going to really make you think about history and science, and maybe even life itself. Memory of the Unborn. Just the title just gets you thinking, right?
Yeah, it really does sort of set the stage for something pretty wild. And as we get into this sci-fi thriller, it takes place in 2041, not too far in the future. And we're going to be uncovering this mystery that's got this, it's kind of a mix of really advanced science and then ancient myths and legends.
So we're trying to figure out the truth about this guy, Om Shastri. He seems like a regular school teacher, but he claims he's lived for thousands of years and seen all these major historical events firsthand. Is he just messing with everyone? Is he delusional? Or is there actually something more to his story?
The novel starts us off right in the middle of this whole mystery. We're meeting this research team, and they have to figure out what's going on with Om and these crazy claims he's making. And of course, they're skeptical. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, you'd think they'd be like pulling out the psychology textbooks, right?
Hmm.
But then Ohm starts saying some pretty out there things about history. He says he was Chanakya, like the guy behind the Mauryan Empire in 321 BC, advising Chandragupta Maurya.
And that's not even all. He also says he was there during the events of the Ramayana. That's one of the most important epics in Hindu mythology. As Sushan, this really skilled healer.
Yeah.
And we're talking way, way back, 7292 BC.
So he's not just saying he's old, he's saying he hung out with all these legendary figures throughout history. It's almost like, come on, that's too much, right? But then the evidence starts showing up.
Yeah, and it's not just like stories. The research team actually finds documents, bank accounts, even a driver's license. They're all linked to Om. But with all these different names from all these different time periods, every single thing they find just makes it harder and harder to believe that he's making it all up. And it makes us, the readers, have to think, well, maybe he is telling the truth.
And get this, each document has his picture on it. It's like he's been going to photo booths throughout history, leaving little clues that all lead back to him in 2041.
Yeah, and that's where the novel starts to get really interesting. We see this clash uh, between two different ways of looking at things, and each viewpoint is represented by a different person on the research team.
It's that classic battle between logic and faith, science versus mythology, right? So there's Dr. Shahista. She's the practical one. She believes in what she can see and measure, very scientific. So she's thinking maybe has some kind of mental illness that makes him invent these elaborate stories.
And then you've got Abhilash. He's an expert in Hindu mythology, so he sees something more in what Om's saying, like it's connecting with the ancient texts and stories that have been passed down for generations. He starts to see these connections between Om's story and the legends about immortals, these beings who live outside of time and never die.
And here's where things get really mind-blowing. Abhilash says that ancient Hindu texts, like the Hanuman Chalisa, have scientific information in them that's centuries ahead of what modern science knew. He points to how they calculated the distance between the Earth and the Sun in the Hanuman Chalisa. It's incredibly close to what we know now from astronomy.
And he brings up another example. Sayana calculated the speed of light way back in the 14th century. That was way before Western scientists even started thinking about those kinds of things. It just makes you wonder, what if these ancient texts have a lot more knowledge that we're only just now starting to rediscover?
It really makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about history, doesn't it? Like, where did scientific thought really begin? It makes you wonder what other secrets are hiding in those old texts, just waiting for someone to find them. But let's get back to What about all this evidence that backs up his crazy claims?
Well, the research team is stuck between these two different points of view, and they're starting to get really uneasy and unsure about what to think. No matter how weird it seems, the evidence just keeps piling up, and even Dr. Shahista, with her scientific mind, she can't just ignore it all.
So what do? They decide to go right to the source. They try to get into Om's mind through hypnosis. And when he starts telling them about his supposed life going all the way back to the Satya Yuga, the first of the four yugas in Hindu mythology, that's when things get really wild.
Imagine you're watching this documentary, right? But it's not about the past we learn in school. It's like a window into this ancient world full of life and big battles and all these figures you usually only see in mythology. That's what the research team is seeing as Om tells his story.
They're seeing things from a time that's long gone, like tribal life, the amazing things in ancient India, and they even see Om meeting figures like Lord Rama, Lakshman, and Hanuman, all through these memories he has under hypnosis. It's like they found this secret archive of human history that changes everything we thought we knew.
And right in the middle of all this historical and mythological stuff, we learn about this thing called the Mirit Sanjivani. It's this mythical herb that can bring people back to life. Om says this is why he's lived so long. It's the key to him being immortal.
It sounds like something out of a fantasy book, some magic plant that gives you eternal life. But when you think about it in Om's story, it almost starts to seem possible.
Om says that he was brought back to life by this sage, Danvantori, using the Mivrit Sanjivani after he was fatally wounded. This event made him ageless and basically impossible to kill. It's like a mix of mythology and science that makes you wonder if there's some truth hidden in those ancient legends.
It makes you think, what if this mythical herb is actually out there somewhere, hidden in some remote part of the world? It really makes you question what's possible, doesn't it?
The novel doesn't avoid these questions. In fact, it connects Om to the very beginning of Ayurveda, one of the oldest medical systems in the world. Om says he helped put together the Sushruta Samhita, which is an ancient Indian text about surgery that people still study and respect today.
Hold on, are we talking about the Sushruta, the father of surgery?
The one and only. The novel cleverly mixes real historical figures and texts into its fictional story, blurring the lines between what's real and what's made up, between myth and reality. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about history, about how medicine began, about life and death itself.
So we have Om, this seemingly normal school teacher who's saying he's lived for thousands of years, seen all these huge events in history, and even helped create one of the most important medical systems in the world.
And, as if that wasn't enough, there's more. When the research team digs deeper into Om's life, they find this hidden collection of ancient artifacts and a map that seems to point to a really important location.
A map to what? Another piece of the puzzle? Maybe it leads to the Mivrit Sanjivani itself.
The novel leaves us hanging with this sense of anticipation and the feeling that Om's story, as wild as it sounds, is about to take a very dangerous turn.
This is where the thriller part of the novel really kicks in. It turns out that Om and the secret he's carrying are in big trouble. There's this powerful, shadowy organization that's after him. They want to get their hands on what he knows.
And this is where the stakes get really high. We're introduced to this group that works in the shadows. They seem to have unlimited resources, and they are absolutely determined to get the secret of immortality.
And they launch this bold attack on their research facility. The scene is crazy. It's like futuristic technology mixed with ancient fighting techniques, showing this clash of eras that reflects the themes of the whole novel.
The attackers are incredibly skilled. They use these advanced weapons and ancient martial arts that the facility's security people are totally unprepared for.
Yeah.
It's like watching a battle between modern soldiers and warriors from myths. It's a visual representation of that conflict between the scientific and the mystical that you see throughout the book.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, we meet the attackers. Parashuram and Ashwatthama, these are figures straight out of Hindu mythology. They're both supposed to be immortal. It's like the novel took these figures from ancient texts and threw them right into the middle of this modern thriller.
It's one of those moments that just makes you stop and think, like, wait a minute, is this even possible? Could these figures, who we always thought were just legends, could they actually be real, living in secret, outside of history and time?
It's a question that hangs over the rest of the novel as we dig deeper into Om's past and the secrets he's been keeping for thousands of years. It makes you question what you think is possible. It blurs the lines between fantasy and reality, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat, wanting to know more.
And once these immortal figures show up, the story gets a whole lot more complicated and dangerous. The fight for the Mivrit Sanjivani has just begun, and the stakes couldn't be any higher. We're talking about the potential for eternal life, something that humans have been fascinated with for centuries.
This is just the start of our deep dive into Memory of the Unborn. We've found a mystery that stretches back thousands of years, a story that weaves together science, mythology, history, and a good dose of suspense.
And we've only scratched the surface of Om's story. There are a lot more twists and turns to come, so get ready because this deep dive is about to get a whole lot deeper.
So last time, things got pretty intense, right? We had these immortals attacking a research facility, this secret organization pulling strings in the background, and Om right in the middle of it all.
It really makes you question everything. Like,
Right.
who can you trust? What are they all really after? And what is this whole fight for immortality really about?
And don't forget, we found out that Om really was telling the truth about living through all those different historical periods.
Makes you rethink history, right?
Right.
Like, what if there's this whole hidden world right under our noses where all those ancient myths and legends are actually real?
It's a lot to take in. So let's try to put together what we know so far. Om, our seemingly ordinary school teacher, is actually thousands of years old.
Right, and you see these huge historical events, met legendary figures, even helped develop Ayurveda,
And it's all because of the Michit Sanjivani, that mythical herb that made him immortal?
the herb that everyone seems to want.
Exactly. But how did Om go from being this guy who was fatally wounded to the Om Shastri we meet in 2041? What happened after Dambantari saved him?
Well, Om keeps telling his story under hypnosis, and we go back to his early life after he was revived. Remember, he didn't remember who he was, his body was messed up, and he was thrown into this world that was both familiar and totally strange.
It's hard to imagine what that would be like. Waking up with no past, no idea who you are, just the knowledge that you've been given a second chance, but there's a life you could never have imagined.
He starts off calling himself Mrityunjay, which means victor over death.
That's pretty fitting, considering he literally beat death. It's like he's reborn, shedding his old self and embracing this new, incredible existence.
He's taken in by Kasiraja, the sage who created the Mrit Sanjivani, and he joins this small, hidden community of 10 sages. They're dedicated to studying and protecting Ayurveda.
So that's where his connection to Ayurveda really gets strong.
Yeah, it's not just some medical system to him. It's part of his history, his heritage, who he is.
He's surrounded by this ancient knowledge, learning from the masters.
And that's where he meets Sushruta, one of the other sages, and they work together on putting together the Sushruta Samhita.
Wait, are you saying Om helped to write one of the most important medical texts ever? The one that surgeons still study today?
That's right. The novel does a great job of blending real historical figures and texts into this fictional story, which makes it even more believable and captivating.
It blows my mind to think that who claims to be thousands of years old, might have actually shaped the course of medical history. But it also makes you wonder, if he's been around for so long, why didn't he reveal himself before? Why stay hidden when he could have shared his knowledge and maybe changed medicine centuries ago?
Those are some of the questions the novel explores as we learn more about what drives Om and the burdens he carries. It seems like being immortal, even though it's a gift, also comes with a heavy price.
Yeah, I can see that. Imagine seeing centuries of history, civilizations rising and falling, all that human suffering. That's a lot for one person to deal with.
And we start to see that Om's life, even though it's extraordinary, has its dark moments, its tragedies.
Is that where his brother, Nagendra, comes in? We know he betrayed the sages and wanted the Mrit Sanjivani for himself.
Yogendra's betrayal is a turning point in Om's story. It shatters the peace and quiet of their secluded life and makes Om face the darker side of human nature, even in his own family.
He's like a classic tragedy, brother against brother, fighting for power with consequences that are eternal.
And what's interesting is that the novel doesn't make Nagendra out to be a pure villain. He's driven by ambition, sure, but also by this desire for knowledge, to understand everything the Mrit Sanjivani can do.
So it's not just about living forever. It's about unlocking the secrets of life and death, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Exactly. And that theme of ambition and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge runs through the whole novel. It makes you think about the limits of science and whether we should mess with the natural order of things.
So going back to the attack, what happens to Om when Nagendra betrays the group?
Om is still pretty young and inexperienced at this point. He's forced to run away with the Mrit Sanjivani texts. They trust him to protect this ancient knowledge from those who would abuse it.
He becomes this reluctant guardian of immortality.
He's got this secret that could change the world, but it's also a burden that could destroy him.
It's a key moment that sets Om on a path of secrecy and loneliness.
He has to leave behind everything he knew, the community he belonged to, and start this journey that will last for thousands of years.
So he spends the next few thousand years, basically, hiding.
Not quite.
Yeah.
He lives many lives, takes on different identities, travels all over the world.
It sounds lonely. Like, you're a witness to time, but you never really belong anywhere.
It's both a blessing and a curse. He gets to experience all the richness and diversity of human civilization, but also all its cruelty and destruction.
And through it all, he's got this knowledge of Ayurveda, and he uses it to help people whenever he can. It's like he's trying to make up for his brother's betrayal, using his gift for good in a world that often seems so dark.
That's a really interesting point. There's this sense of atonement in what he does. Like he wants to balance out the chaos that Nagendra created by chasing power.
It makes his character even more complex. He's not just some immortal being. He's a man struggling with his past, his choices, and the consequences of those choices.
But how does he even stay himself through all of that? How does he hold on to who he is when he's constantly changing his appearance?
It's like the ultimate test of identity, right? To exist outside of normal time and who you are.
Maybe the Merit San Giovanni itself helps him stay grounded, keeping his consciousness going across the millennia.
So we know has this long, complicated history. But how did he end up in that research facility in 2041? What brought him back into the open after all that time?
Well, it turns out Om wasn't just living a quiet life as a teacher. He was actively searching for something, or rather someone.
Okay, that's interesting. Who was he looking for?
He was looking for other immortals, specifically Parashuram and Ashwatthama.
Wait a minute, aren't those the guys who attacked the research facility?
The very same. The ones who are supposed to be immortal themselves.
Oh, okay, so we have an immortal looking for other immortals. What's the connection? Why is Om so focused on finding them?
The novel doesn't give us all the answers, but it seems like Om and these guys have some deeper history, something that goes back to his time with the sages.
So there's even more to this story than we first thought. It's like peeling back layers of an onion. Every time you think you understand it, there's something else underneath.
It's a mystery that keeps you guessing until the very end.
This is incredible. We've gone from this simple sci-fi idea to this really complex story about identity, immortality, ancient history, and mythology.
And the best part is, it all feels natural. The story pulls you in, revealing its secrets and twists as you go along.
So what happens next? Does Om find these other immortals? What's the point of his search?
Well, that's where we'll have to pick up in the next part of our deep dive. The story takes another unexpected turn, and things get even more intense.
Oh, come on, you're killing me with suspense.
Don't worry, we'll get to the bottom of this soon enough. But for now, I want you to think about the questions we've raised. What does it really mean to be immortal? What are the good and bad parts? What would you do if you could live forever?
Okay, so last time we were left with Parashuram, axe in hand, barging into that interrogation room. I mean, talk about a culture clash. Ancient mythology meets modern science.
It's that moment in the novel where those two worlds really start to blend together. We're not even sure if Om getting out of there is a good thing, or if it's just leading him into something even more complicated.
So break down that escape for us. What happens to the research team? What about Virpadra, the security chief? He's not just going to let Parashram walk out with Om without a fight, is he?
Well, it's total chaos, a blur of action and emotion. Parshuram, he's got that legendary axe, right? He takes on the rest of the security guys, and he's so skilled and powerful, it's almost superhuman. Ashwatthama, the other immortal, he rushes to Um's side, totally protective, like he's ready for anything.
And the research team, I mean, they're caught in the middle of this. You'd think they'd be freaking out, maybe even questioning their sanity at this point.
You'd think so, right? But they all react differently. Dr. Shahista, she's all about logic and facts, so she's in shock, trying to figure out how what she's seeing is even possible. Dr. Batra's just plain scared, like he's in a nightmare. But Abhilash, the mythology expert, he seems almost like he was expecting this, like he knew it was going to happen.
Maybe he's just really good at staying calm under pressure. But what about LSD and Paramol? We know Paramol's working with the attackers, but where does LSD's loyalty lie?
That's where the novel throws us another twist. LSD, who you'd think was a loyal security guy, is actually working with Parashuram and Ashwatthama too.
Wow, talk about a double cross. Everyone seems to have their own agenda, their own secrets. Why would LSD side with the attackers, though?
Remember that shadowy organization we talked about, the one that's obsessed with getting the Mitter San Giovanni? Well, it turns out LSD, Parashuram, and Ashwatthama are all working against them. They're part of this group of immortals who want to keep the secret of the Mitter San Giovanni out of the wrong hands.
So it's not just a fight about immortality, it's a fight for control over it. It's like these different groups of immortals, each with their own beliefs and goals, are battling it out. But where does Om fit in? Whose side is he really on?
That's the big question that hangs over the rest of the novel. Remember, Om was looking for Parashuram and Ashwatthama. He thought they could help him understand his past, his immortality, maybe even figure out how to reverse it. He felt trapped by his long life, lonely, unable to really connect with regular people.
So he saw these other immortals as a way to get some answers, maybe even find some connection. But now that they've found him, it's not clear if they want the same things or if he's just jumped from one trap to another.
Exactly. Can he trust these immortals who just pulled him out of his life? Are they really allies, or are they just using him?
He's in a tough spot. But hold on, they can't just stroll out of a high-security facility, can they? How did they get away?
It's a pretty daring escape, a mix of ancient knowledge and modern tech. They use secret passages, hidden tunnels, even a submarine, and of course some good old-fashioned firepower. Paramol, knowing the facility inside and out, really helps them. It just shows how much Betrayal and shifting alliances are a part of this whole thing.
What about Batra? He wouldn't just give up, would he?
He puts up a good fight, but he's outmatched. But before he dies, we learn something really important. He was just a pawn, manipulated by the organization he thought he was working for. He really believed he was protecting humanity. He had no idea what was really going on.
That's kind of sad. It shows how good intentions can get twisted, especially when you're dealing with something as powerful and dangerous as immortality.
It makes you think about power and control and how far people will go to get what they want, even if they think they're doing it for a good reason.
So they get away. Where do they go? What do they do next?
They head for this remote island, the place shown on that mysterious map we talked about. And this is where the novel gets really poetic.
Hmm.
It's the same island where Om was born thousands of years ago.
Wow, it's like he's been brought back to the beginning. But why this island? What's so special about it?
We don't know for sure, but it seems like it's more than just a birthplace. Remember those ancient artifacts Om had hidden? They're brought to the island, and Agendra, who now has both parts of the Mython Giovanni text, starts studying them really closely.
Okay, so we've got this group of immortals, a mysterious island, ancient artifacts, and the secret of eternal life. It sounds like the perfect setup for a sequel, but how does Memory of the Unborn actually end?
The ending gives you some answers, but it also leaves you with some things to think about. We see Parashuram, Ashwadama, and Agendra, and they seem to be united in their quest to figure out everything the Minaret San Giovanni can do, to understand its power, and maybe even go beyond the limits of their current existence.
What about Om, though? What's his role in all this?
That's the question the novel leaves us with. We see him looking at the sunset, deep in thought. He's seen so much history, so much loss and change. You can almost feel the weight of all those years on him.
It's a powerful image, full of emotion. He's at a crossroads, isn't he? He can join these other immortals in their quest for knowledge and power, or he can go his own way, maybe even try to find a way back to the world of mortals.
The novel doesn't tell us what he chooses, but it makes us think about the consequences of immortality. What does it mean to live outside of time? What are the sacrifices? What are the burdens? And in the end, what does it really mean to be human, even when you've gone beyond the limits of being mortal?
That's a lot to ponder. Memory of the Unborn doesn't give you easy answers. It makes you question what you know about history, science, and even reality itself. And it leaves you with more questions than answers.
And that's what makes a good story so great, isn't it? It sparks your curiosity, makes you challenge your own ideas, and stays with you long after you've finished it.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. We started off skeptical, then we got caught up in the wonder. We went from scientific debates to these fascinating mythological mysteries. And I feel like I've only just scratched the surface of this amazing novel.
It's a story you can read again and again, and each time you'll find something new, some new layer of meaning.
So to all our listeners, if you haven't read Memory of the Unborn yet, I highly recommend it. It's a mind-bending story that will stick with you.
And as always, we want to hear what you think. What parts of the story stood out to you? What are you still thinking about? Share your thoughts and ideas. And let's keep this conversation going.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows, maybe we'll unlock the secrets of the universe.